Welcome to this week's episode of This Week in Sports. Alongside Matt McNamara and Casey Bryant, I'm your host, Pete Denoda. On this week's episode, we're going to talk about a wide range of topics, including NFL, NHL, and NBA. So let's get to it. This week in the NFL, there were a lot of exciting games, a lot of comebacks, including the Lions coming back to beat the Dolphins. What's your thought on that game?
I thought the Lions played terrifically, and they showed once again that they can make a great comeback against a really good team. The Dolphins have a great defense, as we saw last week against the Chargers, shutting them out 37-0. And the Lions were able to put up, a good amount of points on them. And it helps that Calvin Johnson is back because they missed him, certainly. Had 7 receptions for over 110 yards. The Lions are a very good team right now, and if they can keep making these comeback victories, even winning games by more than that, then I think they'll do very well. I mean, they're in a sort of tough division, but because the Packers are playing so well. But it is a 2-team race so far. So if they can continue playing the way they are, stay healthy, I think they have a great shot at the playoffs and even making it pretty far into the playoffs. So they played extremely well.
Yeah, the reason why the Lions have been so successful, especially in this game against Miami, is that they stuck to what they can do best. They stifled the run game. They held Miami to only 50 rushing yards. And Matthew Stafford, you know exactly who he's going to. He's only going to Calvin Johnson or Golden Tate, and you still can't stop them because they're just that good. Johnson, like Matt said, had over 110 yards. Golden Tate had 11 receptions for 109 yards. I mean, both of these guys are such tremendous offensive weapons. And the Detroit Lions defense, what can you say about them? They haven't allowed more than 25 points all year. Today was no the same. I mean, the Detroit Lions have been absolutely fantastic this year. They stick to their game. They play solid defense. And what can you say? You just can't stop Matt Stafford in the fourth quarter, apparently.
Detroit's been on a roll. But another team that somewhat saved their season yesterday was the 49ers coming back to beat the Saints in the Superdome. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, they pulled through, and it was a very important game for them. I mean, they were a little bit on the fence. They'd given up a big lead, 21-10, which they shouldn't do. And Phil Dawson had a very clutch field goal, and they were able to extend it in overtime and play well during overtime in order to get the win. But though, as I mentioned before, with the blown lead, they can't be doing that against these teams because they have some tough games for the rest of their schedule. They still have 2 games against Seattle, and they have 1 against Arizona. So they're showing that they can play well. They did very well in the rush with Hyde and with Gore, but they need to sort of bring the team together, and Kaepernick needs to have a better game. He had a good game, but we've seen what Kaepernick can do, and he played terrifically so far.
Absolutely. The one thing that's going to hold back San Francisco in the upcoming weeks would be Colin Kaepernick, because I think he's just made far too many panic decisions the past couple of weeks. I mean, this game, while it may have saved the 49ers season for the time being, I think it still may be a case of too little too late, because like Matt said, they played the Seahawks twice, they played the Cardinals, albeit they'll be without Carson Palmer since he tore his ACL, but even with Drew Stanton behind, the offensive line and calling all the shots, they're still a very threatening team. They beat the Giants this year with Drew Stanton manning the helm. So I would say that the 49ers just have far too many obstacles to overcome, and Kaepernick he needs to learn to branch out more. He hasn't been targeting Michael Crabtree at much, instead relying far too heavily on Anquan Bolden. I think he has to spread the wealth a little better and stop trying to do so much on his own. I think that the 49ers, if they're going to do well, they're going to need Colin Kaepernick for these final 7 weeks.
Yeah, Kaepernick really needs to step up if the 49ers want to go anywhere. So, and the last notable comeback of the week was the Chiefs coming back against the Bills in Buffalo. Any thoughts?
I mean, it was an important win for the Chiefs. I mean, they started off a little rough, but they've shown how they can do well in a tough AFC West schedule, and it's a very important game, and it's even more important for the Bills losing the way they did. But the Chiefs played very well. With Jamal Charles back, it's very important for them, and their defense is playing the way that we expect them to with Andy Reid's coaching. The problem with the Chiefs so far is just with Alex Smith. He's not playing terribly, but they are 30th in passing yards, and he has had some mediocre games. Not terrible games, mediocre, less than 200 yards in his past 2 games. But they are playing very well, and if they continue to play the way they are, and show that they can win in close situations and play well as a team overall, I think they have a good shot, maybe not of winning the AFC West, but getting that good wild card position and then making it further into the playoffs. They just need to have a good offense and a good team all around.
The Buffalo Bills beat themselves into submission, really, in this game. You can't win when you're fumbling the ball 3 times, not when you're holding the other quarterback to less than 200 passing yards. I mean, the Bills' defense was able to hold back Kansas City. They beat themselves. And that's so frustrating when you're a team like the Bills who's finally trying to crawl back into the postseason, finally trying to get that wild card spot, which has eluded them for so long. I think that really the Kansas City Chiefs, quite frankly, they just got a little bit lucky. They were able to capitalize on some opportunities. It was a low-scoring affair. It's just that they were able to pick up what the Bills gave them, really. I would say that the Chiefs can count themselves lucky and, focus more on next week, but honestly, it's crushing for the Buffalo Bills.
Definitely.
Yeah, the fact that the Chiefs were able to come back was quite surprising, and a surprising thing in the NFL this season was the Cleveland Browns are in first place.
Yeah,
How the hell did that
who would've
happen?
thought about that?
Yeah, after beating division rival Cincinnati Bengals on Thursday Night Football this past week, they have sole possession of first place. Do you think they can hold on to it for the rest of the season?
I think they have a good shot. I mean, they've been playing well so far, and I feel like if they continue the way they are, it's a great story with their first-year coach, Mike Pettine, with Brian Hoyer at the quarterback helm. Their defense has been pulling through, and they've been able to do it without Josh Gordon, which is a huge loss for them at the beginning of the season. But with him coming back and the whole team playing extremely well, I think they can definitely make a playoff run. It is a tough division, but they need to win their next 3 games because the last 4 games they have, home against Indiana, home against Cincinnati, on the road against Carolina, and then against Baltimore. So, but the next 3 games they have are pretty simple. So if they can win those, I feel like they could win the division, but I think they will definitely get a wild card spot, which would be terrific for the city of Cleveland and just for the whole team in general. It's been a while for them. And
It's been
just,
way too long for
it's
that
great.
city.
It's a great story,
Yeah.
and I can't wait to see how it unfolds.
You know what's great about this year for the Cleveland Browns is that now that they're 6-3 and they lead their division, the world can finally stop talking about Johnny Manziel. For the love of God, just stop talking about him, because now Hoyer is actually leading a very good football team right now. The Browns dominated the Cincinnati Bengals this year. They rushed for more total yards for Cincinnati. They absolutely dominated the entire game. They're showing that Hoyer can absolutely lead this team into the postseason, maybe further. You don't know. So now I think that just takes a whole lot of pressure off of Manziel to be the guy coming in. He doesn't have to be the #1 star coming in. I think it's just a load off for both the Browns franchise and Manziel. You don't have a kind of situation like the Jets had last year where, people are always questioning who should start, who should be the #1 quarterback. Do you give it to the young kid as opposed to the guy who's been there for a couple of years? Now the world can just finally lay off the Browns and they can actually focus on winning football games.
But maybe some people think that if Manziel was in the game, they'd be 9-0 by now.
I'm
they have
sure
such
there are
high
people out there.
expectations for him.
I'm sure there are people out there, but they just have to accept what their team is and know that it's in capable hands with Hoyer.
I know. I would accept them.
The Browns in first place, that's a surprise, but even more surprising, the Jets beat the Steelers. Going into the week, nobody was giving the Jets a chance, including me. I hate the Jets. But the Jets shut down the offensive
The Steelers,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, terrific.
Roethlisberger threw 6 touchdowns in back-to-back games, and they just shut him down. What do you guys think of that game?
The Jets remembered how to play football, and that's as simple as it gets. I mean, first of all, Michael Vick was typical Michael Vick, which you were not expecting in this Jets offensive line with Marty Morningwig. But, he made a lot of good decisions. Not every decision was good, but he made enough good decisions to really drive the team down. If he didn't find a good pass, he would run it. If he found a good pass, he would make good throws and very accurate. And they ran the ball very well with some of their guys, and Vick was very Vick. And this is the most important part, the Jets had turnovers. Coming into this game, they had 3 turnovers for the entire season. In this game, they had 3 turnovers, or 3 or 4, around that mark. And honestly, it's like a kind of Freaky Friday situation because the Steelers and Jets sort of switched, I feel like, because the Steelers did not show up. The team we were expecting. Everyone was saying Roethlisberger, if he can throw 6 touchdowns against this team, what's going to stop him from throwing 8 touchdowns against the Jets? I mean, they did not show up. Antonio Brown had the 2 fumbles. The Steelers team overall, their defense did not show up. It was a terrible game for the Steelers. Good game for the Jets. If I'm the Steelers, I'd be not in panic mode, but close to that because the Jets are that bad this year.
This was a must-win game for the Pittsburgh Steelers because you're going into what is supposed to be the easier part of your schedule. You had the Jets this week, and you have the Tennessee Titans next week. These were supposed to be back-to-back winnable games so that you can contend with the Cleveland Browns at the top of your division. Now, all of a sudden, you're falling back, and you're still, stuck in that pack with the Bengals and the Ravens. You're still struggling to get to that top marker. For all the hoopla this week of, is the stadium going to be full of Steelers fans? Are they going to invade MetLife Stadium? In the opening 10 minutes, they were down 10-0, 17-0. All of a sudden, the Jets are pouncing on Pittsburgh, and they don't have time to collect their own thoughts. I mean, the one reason why the Jets were able to succeed is because they were able to integrate Percy Harvin into their offense. I think that just the extended practice time with him in their offense, it's just something that we didn't see last week. I would say that, since your leading rushers at one point during the game were both Vick and Harvin. I mean, the fact that you're integrating both of those weapons into your offense, it makes the Jets a deeper team at the very least. It doesn't make them good. let's not get it confused. They're not winning out.
No.
It's just not
But
happening.
shows something.
They're a bad football team.
They're
Exactly.
growing. They're growing, and I think that's really what the Jets are. They're playing for pride at this point.
They
and
play
this
for
is-
their jobs.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that this is a game where you can look at if you're the New York Jets and you can say, you know what, we have something to build on. There's reason for optimism going into next season. It doesn't take us blowing up the roster. For
I
next
mean,
year.
you have to be impressed with the Jets fans actually showing up. I mean, they're dedicated. I mean, they're bad, but they're dedicated. I mean, that's just how the Jets are, rebuilding since 1969.
Yeah.
In off-the-field news, Minnesota Vikings running back Adrian Peterson pled no contest on one misdemeanor count of reckless injury to his son. For more news about that, Week 11 in the NFL season and the college football playoff standings, tune in on Thursday for our first episode of This Week in Football. We're back and we're talking NHL hockey. I'm going to make you guys give me your 3 stars of the week. So, Casey, start off. Give me your 3rd star.
I'm going to go with a lesser-known player around the NHL. I'm going to go with Toronto's Peter Holland. He's a young kid. He's 23, but in the past week, he scored some big goals for the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's got 3 goals and 1 assist. He's got a +4 rating in the past week. He's just been integral to the Leafs offense, which is really so key for Toronto, especially because they focus so much on being a 4-line deep team. They focus so much on their depth. So the kid Peter Holland has really been a spark plug for Toronto the past week. He scored some key goals against Ottawa in their 5-3 win on Sunday, and they beat the Rangers 5-4 on Saturday in a comeback win. So I would say that Peter Holland has definitely been one of the standouts of this week.
And, Matt, what's your 3rd star?
My 3rd star, I'm going to go with Corey Crawford. He's been lights out so far in these past couple of games. He's showing what a good goalie he can be. He shut out the Canadiens with 28 saves. The next game, he gave up 3 goals to a tough Washington offense. Still had 24 saves, but then came back the next week with 32 saves against the Sharks in the 5-2 victory. He's 5th in the league now in goals allowed per appearance. If he can keep up the way he's playing right now, the Blackhawks will once again soar up the standings and be a really dominant team once again and even make a good playoff run with Crawford at the helm.
Casey, give me your 2nd star.
Well, my 2nd star of the week, sticking with goalies here, I'm going with Andrei Pavlich of the Winnipeg Jets. Pavlich is a guy who doesn't traditionally do terribly well. He's always been towards the bottom of the barrel, really, in the goaltending department. But Pavlich this year has absolutely stepped up his game, and he's a major reason why the Jets are still where they are in the Central Division. Pavlich is 3-0-1 this week. He's only allowed 2 goals in the 3 wins, that they have. He's got a shutout, and the one loss that he did have came in a shootout. So really, that's kind of a toss-up, really. I'm personally against the shootout, but that's another conversation for another time, really. Pavlich has absolutely been stellar this week, this month, this year. Pavlich is a major reason for the Winnipeg Jets' success.
Matt, what's your 2nd star?
My 2nd star goes to Vladimir Tarasenko of the St. Louis Blues. He has a great offensive week so far. He had 6 points this week with 3 goals and 3 assists and a plus-minus rating of 3. They picked up 2 big wins as a team against New Jersey and the Rangers, as I said before, and a close loss to a good Predators team. He's a big part of that great St. Louis Blues team who can once again get into the playoffs, make a better playoff run than they did last year, but Tarasenko has been very well on the offense and just a great integral part of their team.
And the goals that he scored have been absolutely fantastic.
terrific.
He absolutely undressed the Devils and the Rangers this week, and he's absolutely, what can you say about it? He's definitely a budding star in the NHL. I think it won't be long before we're putting him in the same category as Patrick Kane.
Yeah. All right, last but not least, what's your 1st star of the week?
My 1st star has to be Mark Giordano from the Calgary Flames. He led the NHL this week in points with 2 goals and 5 assists in 3 games. He leads his team in points. He's got 18. I mean, what can you say? He's just absolutely fantastic. I mean, the Flames have been red hot lately, no pun intended. Maybe it is intended. I don't know. Who am I kidding? But the Flames, they're still in playoff contention in that Pacific Division, and Giordano is a major part. He's been the central cog in that offense. Giordano was absolutely stellar this week. I have to give him the 1st star.
Yeah, gotta love a good pun.
Matt, what's your 1st star?
My 1st star of the week is Chris Letang for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He had a very interesting week. 5 points during the week. He's been a big part of their huge winning streak for the Penguins. And against the Sabres in this past week, he had 2 goals and 2 assists in a blowout victory. So with guys like Crosby and Malkic already leading the Pittsburgh Penguins, Letang can just be a much bigger, more integral part of that team. And they've been very good on offense and as a team in general. So they're doing very well. And Letang is a huge part of that, both on the offense and on the defense.
They really missed Letang last season, especially because he was suffering some very serious health issues last year. I think that, having Chris Letang back healthy and confident, that's such a major, major part of their offense because he quarterbacks that power play. He's such a rock-solid piece of that blue line. Having Chris Letang back at full strength, that's really so key for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Definitely.
Yeah, all those guys had great weeks. And there were also some great moments off the ice as well as on the ice. What was your shining moment of the week?
Well, my shining moment of the week has to be Rick Jeanneret of the Buffalo Sabres organization being announced that he is cancer-free this week. It came out in the midst of the NHL's Hockey Fights Cancer campaign for this month. Rick Jeanneret, the play-by-play announcer for the Buffalo Sabres of now 42 years. I mean, good for him, really, for staying in the business so long. Finally announcing he's cancer-free. It comes within the same time frame as Jim Kelly, former Buffalo sports legend, announcing that his cancer is in remission. I mean, it's a great month for Buffalo sports in particular, but good for Rick Jeanneret. I mean, he's 73. Good for him for staying with it and, back to being full strength because Jeanneret is so passionate and so into the game, so knowledgeable. I mean, he's a quirky, colorful guy, but I'm just glad that he's healthy.
Matt, what's your shining moment?
My shining moment is Andrei Pavlich had a terrific game against the Ottawa Senators. 37 saves in the shootout victory, 2-1. In the shootout period, he gave up an early goal midway through the first period and shut them down afterwards. But during the shootout period, he stopped all 6 shootout goal attempts for the Ottawa Senators. And Ottawa has a very good offense, 15th overall, 9th in power play. He was just stellar for the Winnipeg Jets. And if he can keep this up, I would say a lot about the Winnipeg Jets as a team in general, and they can make it pretty far if Pavlich keeps playing the way he is.
Yeah, those are both great stories. You said previously the Flames are on fire. They're currently tied.
Yeah. Gotta love a good pun. Yeah. Gotta.
The Flames are currently tied for second in the Pacific Division with the Vancouver Canucks after finishing 6th last year. Do you think they're legit?
I don't, quite frankly, to be honest. I think that the Flames will burn out. I hate myself. So I think that the Flames are eventually going to die off just because the Kings and the Sharks are currently out of the playoffs in their division. Now, the Kings are very traditionally slow starters in their division. They always start, towards the bottom half and then pick it up, and then what do you know, they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. So the Los Angeles Kings are traditionally slow starters. The Sharks aren't as powerful as they were last year, but I still think that you have to consider them perennial contenders. So I would say that because of the lackluster play from Los Angeles and San Jose, you're going to eventually start seeing teams like Vancouver and Calgary start to slip back into reality a little bit. And not to say that, they won't be wholly competitive this year, but I think you just have to think that they're eventually going to make way for Los Angeles and San Jose.
Yeah. I actually have to disagree. I think the Flames are a terrific team so far, and I think they'll continue to be that way. And the numbers prove it. They're 6th in goals, 13th in goals allowed, they're 12th in power play percentage, and they have 5 players already in double-digit scoring, which is huge for them. And as Casey mentioned before, Mark Giordano, he's been on fire so far for the team. 5 goals, 13 assists. He's been terrific. And they've gotten good production out of other guys like TJ Brody and Sean Monahan, who leads the team in goals. And Jonas Hiller has continued to show his early season dominance. He has 7 wins, 2.07 goals allowed per game, and a .931 save percentage. If Hiller can stay the way he is, and if their offense can stay as hot as they are currently, I think the Flames have a good shot at making the playoffs.
The one concern I would have for Jonas Hiller is just, can he stay healthy?
Yeah.
Because in the past, with his days with the Anaheim Ducks, the one problem that they would always have is that as the season wore on, his body just degenerates, really. So you have to wonder, can he stay healthy? Because to be honest, the Flames are not very deep in the goaltending department, so they have to hope.
Health is very important.
Absolutely. You have to hope that Jonas Hiller, if he can't keep up his torrid pace right now, which, everyone enters the stratosphere, again. They come back down to earth. You just have to hope that he stays healthy over the course of the year.
Definitely.
If they can, then Calgary will slowly start to improve because they are rebuilding. They're still in a rebuilding process. But if Hiller stays healthy, they would be able to pick up a few points.
Yeah, the Flames are definitely a team on the rise, but teams that are already on the top of the beast of the East. The Penguins are the leader of the Metropolitan Division on a 7-game winning streak, and the Tampa Bay Lightning are on the top of the Atlantic Division on a 6-game winning streak. What do you guys think about both those teams?
The Penguins have absolutely dominated. There's no other word for it. It's just they are manhandling the entire league right now at this point. You have Sidney Crosby, who leads the league in points with 24 already. I mean, the man is on pace for 100 points yet again. And you have Patrick Hornqvist, who they acquired in a trade from Nashville for James Neal, sliding into that offense absolutely perfectly. He's already got 9 goals and 9 assists. I mean, he's fitting right in that top 6 role for the Pittsburgh Penguins. There was concern over whether he would have the same scoring touch as James Neal, a former 40-goal scorer, and it's just very clear that he's able to fit right in. And then obviously you have Evgeny Malkin is going to be stellar through the whole year because he's one of the top players in the world. You have Chris Kunitz picking up points on the same line as Pascal Dupuis and Sidney Crosby. And, as Matt touched on a little bit before, Chris Letang is on the power play and on the point. Their special teams have been crazy because of that. They are first in power play percentage, 37.5 operational percentage. That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's unreal.
That's unbelievable.
And even still is that they're not suffering defensively as a result of all of their offensive play. They're still third in penalty killing. So you have to hope that, you have to think the Pittsburgh Penguins are the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, obviously the big concern for them as of last year was just health and everything like that. They played, and with guys like Evgeny Malkin out for the time that they were out. But if they stay healthy, I think they can honestly be one of the best teams that we've seen in quite a while. And with Marc-Andre Fleury, he's been very good in the goals too. Well, he is 1.90 goals per game allowed. And so the Pittsburgh Penguins, the way that their offense is playing, the way that they're playing as a team overall, if they can be as consistent, if they can be as healthy, I think they have a very good shot at being probably one of the best teams we've seen and maybe even make it back to the Stanley Cup Finals, and we'll see. But they have a terrific team.
I think that Fleury getting that contract extension will really help solidify him. He'll just feel a whole lot more calm.
He'll be able to play his game.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Penguins have changed their goaltending coach. They have Fleury locked down for another 4 years. I think that's going to help his mind so much because Fleury, traditionally, he blows up in the playoffs. That's the knock against him. That's just always been the thing surrounding Marc-Andre Fleury. Yes, he does well in the regular season. Can he keep it up? I think that you're just going to see a whole lot less volatile performance from Marc-Andre Fleury. He's going to be a whole lot steadier this year.
Yeah, they definitely had games to watch, and this past week had a lot of great games. What was your favorite game of the past week?
I would have to say that it's the St. Louis Blues New Jersey Devils game from last Thursday because there was just so much action in the last 4 minutes of the game. There were 4 goals scored in the last 4 minutes of the game. The Blues led 3-0 at one point in the game and then 4-1 a little bit later. The Devils managed to fight their way back and bring it to within 4-3 before finally just falling short of coming back. They scored a goal in the last minute, couldn't slip another one past Brian Elliott. I mean, it was just a fantastic game to watch, so energetic. You love when games come down to the wire like that.
Yeah.
So I would have to give it to the Blues and the Devils.
Yeah.
What was your game of the week?
My game definitely would be the Rangers and the Detroit Red Wings. That was a lot
Thursday
of hype.
night rivalry.
Thursday night rivalry, exactly.
It was a good game.
A lot of hype going down to that game, and they certainly lived up to it. The Rangers were seconds away from clinching the game, and Tatar tied it with 8 seconds left. But then the Rangers had a great power play opportunity, and Brassard nailed a terrific goal for the Rangers. It was just back and forth so well, and it's just great to see those hyped up games live up to the expectations. It was just such a fun match to watch between the two teams.
All right, that'll finish our NHL segment, and we'll be back to talk about the NBA, and we'll finish up with our Speak Up segment. All right, we're back, and we're talking about the NBA. A lot like last year, the Western Conference is the dominant conference. There's about 5 teams that could win the title. You guys evaluate the Western Conference. Matt, you start.
I mean, when we're talking about like the top of the Western Conference, that might be the toughest question you would ask because there's so many good teams in this conference. You wonder, is it better than last year? Which is shocking. I would never think to say that. But I mean, the Grizzlies are dominating with Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph. The Rockets are dominating with guys like Dwight Howard and James Harden playing the way they are. The Warriors are dominating with probably the best backcourt in the league with Thompson and Curry, probably the best shooting backcourt in the league. And the Kings are obviously a huge surprise, but DeMarcus Cousins is playing well, Rudy Gay making a big impact, and they're getting good production out of guys like Ben McLemore and Carl Landry. So the Kings are a big surprise. And this has the potential to be an 11-team playoff race. If teams like the Suns and Pelicans continue to play well, and if the Thunder and Spurs recover, they've both started off a little rough. The Thunder, obviously, with their injuries. But this conference has been just remarkable so far to watch. It's going to be a great NBA season, especially the Western Conference. If I was a team in the Western Conference, I'd probably want to be in the Eastern Conference this year, but it's going to be a very fascinating race so far this year already.
Casey, what do you think?
I mean, it's just very back and forth in the Western Conference. You're seeing a whole lot of 4-3 record, 5-2 record, 3-4 records. You're seeing a whole lot more evenness in the records this year. There's just not as much of a competitive disparity. So I think that's what makes the Western Conference so fascinating is that you are so deep in the talent pool that it's very tough. I mean, Matt touched on some of the more competitive teams. I think the Memphis Grizzlies being 6-1 to start off the year, that's very surprising to me. Marc Gasol, averaging 19 points a game. He's just been absolutely fantastic in the paint. Zach Randolph getting double-digit rebounds per game. The Memphis Grizzlies have been a very surprising team for me. And the Sacramento Kings, I mean, you talk about men playing amongst boys. DeMarcus Cousins is playing like Godzilla amongst toddlers.
Boogie Cousins is finally coming out.
Absolutely. DeMarcus Cousins averaging 23 points and 11 rebounds a game. The guy is an absolute beast this year. I think that this is the year that the Kings finally climb out of the cellar and reclaim Northern California for them. So I would say that the Sacramento Kings, after winning 5 in a row and beating some competitive teams there, they beat the Trailblazers and the Clippers in that run. I would say that the Sacramento Kings are probably going to push the limits of the Western Conference and really start to give teams like, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, those teams are going to start to fall by the wayside because of teams like Memphis and like Sacramento.
Yeah.
In other Western Conference news, Steve Nash's back injury, it was well documented a couple of weeks ago. It's coming back into the NBA year. What do you guys think of that?
Well, I think that the injury that came of Steve Nash, the reason why it's back in the news is because Steve Nash's injury, which was initially labeled as, career-ending, season-ending, however severe you would like to label it as. It was muscle degenerative, disease that was in his back that's been plaguing him his entire career, really. And it's finally coming to a head now to the point where he would be out for the year for the Los Angeles Lakers. Recently, he posted a video on Instagram of him playing golf. And that's just, it caught the eye of the league because the league had just granted a disabled player exception to the Lakers for Julius Randle so that they could save $1.5 million in cap. And they were going to grant that for Steve Nash as well to shut him down for the year. But now that this video has come to light, you start to wonder, is his season really over? Is it as severe as we thought it was initially going to be? So because of that, there's been a little bit of a hesitation to grant that DPE to the Lakers. So I'd say that Nash may have cost the Lakers some money this year by posting a harmless little video of him playing golf.
Yeah, sure. But you have to also consider, obviously the age difference and the wear and tear of both players. I mean, obviously Randall hasn't had nearly as much experience in the NBA as Nash had. And so Nash, although he might seem healthy, to be a great point guard in the NBA and to have that speed and agility and all that, it's not going to be easy. So even if he's at somewhat of good shape, it's going to take a long time for him as opposed to Randall, who has more of a different problem. But he is a big man and he will recover. But yeah, the whole thing with Nash is unfortunate for the players and the whole team as a whole. But obviously, maybe some people might be blowing it out of proportion just a bit.
I would say that Steve Nash, and he said in an open letter to the Lakers fan base, essentially that to play point guard at the NBA level, especially if you're going to be Steve Nash, you have to be able to function at a certain physical point. And he's just not at that point. I mean, it's completely different to be able to swing a golf club and I'm sure he's not Tiger Woods out there or whoever the best golfer is right now, Rory McIlroy, because, Tiger's fallen off the map. But I would say that, if you're going to play point guard at an NBA level, you have to be able to run up and down the court. And if he can't do that, he can't do that. The guy is pushing 40.
It is true. On a lighter note, the Denver Nuggets were in the news for some off-the-court news, some social media news. They decided to poke fun at the Cavs, quote-unquote, troll them. They wanted to advertise the game, get fans there, but they didn't want to mention any of the big three of LeBron, Kyrie, or Kevin Love. So they decided to say, come watch the Nuggets play role players such as Mike Miller. How do you guys grade this trolling attempt?
Honestly, I have to give them an A for their efforts. Who thinks of something like that? That is so interesting and fascinating. I'm not to say guys like Anderson Varejao aren't good players, but I mean,
they're no
still.
LeBron.
I mean, the Cavs ran through them completely, but you gotta love a team with some good humor. And what I like about it is that they're not one of those teams that peddles the best players when they come into town. They're still focusing on their team and their players. And to shift their focus on their own team, it really shows a lot about their fan base. It shows that they're really dedicated to having a good fan base and having a great team and a great organization overall. So I have to give them just an A for an effort. I thought it was harmless, but very funny.
Very funny.
Very funny.
I love a sports franchise that doesn't take itself too seriously. I think you see it a lot more with the San Francisco Giants Twitter account, likes to poke fun. The Los Angeles Kings, the Columbus Blue Jackets, all these teams have very active social media sites, especially on Twitter, that, try to make light of their sport and not to take themselves too seriously, because that's what sports are all about. It's all about, interacting with your fan base and knowing who you are. the Denver Nuggets are 1-5. If you're not going to win some games, at least make it entertaining for your fans.
Yeah.
So I think that it's an admirable effort for the Nuggets. A+ for me. I
it was
love what they were
terrific.
doing there.
Yeah, so to get away from the West and the Nuggets and all that, to move to the East, the Brooklyn Nets point guard came out last week, said he was hurt all last year. That's why he wasn't able to come and play and be good, like he's getting paid to do, and take up a quarter of the salary cap. As a Nets fan, that gets me angry. But he came out, said he was hurt all last year, and he's unguardable. Do you think he's unguardable and can still be an elite point guard?
I think so. I think obviously it is interesting to hear that he was hurt because he still played better than 85% of the NBA when they're healthy. But, I mean, obviously staying healthy for Williams will be great because he's a very agile point guard, and he's very good at, faking other people out. He can drive to the hoop. And with the Nets team, they have two options. You've got your three-point shooters like Teletovic, Bogdanovich, and Joe Johnson, of course. You can kick out to them, or you could go down to the paint with Brook Lopez or Miles Plumlee. So they have a lot of different options for that team, and it's just incredible. I mean, it's an interesting quote to hear from Deron Williams because he didn't miss a lot of time last year, but he still can be an elite point guard, and he is putting up the typical D-Will numbers right now with 20 points and 7 assists per game. So if he can stay healthy, hopefully, for the entire season, then I think the Nets could climb towards the top of the Eastern Conference overall.
It's a good bounce-back moment for Deron Williams. At the very least, Deron Williams, I think, is a guy who just likes to hear himself talk. Because you remember in the offseason where there were trade rumors circulating, is this Williams' last time in Brooklyn? There were rumors that he might be shipped out west. And, Deron Williams said, I don't feel like a New Yorker. I just get the feeling that Deron Williams is a guy who just likes to be in the press every once in a while. So to say that he's unguardable, that's obviously a reach. I don't think that Deron Williams is the #1 point guard in the entire National Basketball Association, but obviously he's playing very well. I mean, his true shooting percentage right now is the second best that it's ever been in his career at 59%. I mean, Williams is obviously performing very well offensively. He dropped 29 against the Knicks when guarded by Iman Shumpert, who's no slouch defensively. So I would say that, D-Will is, sure, going to take control of a couple games, but unguardable might be a little bold, I would say.
All right, so that'll finish up our NBA segment. We'll move into our Speak Up segment where we'll talk about a topic takes interest to us. Matt, you want to start?
Yes, of course. For those of you watching the show with your mouth still agape from the way in which Aaron Rodgers torched the Chicago Bears on Sunday night, your mouth might have to stay open for a few more minutes. Rodgers might already be making a case to be one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and he's only in his 7th season. In fact, he could be on his way to being the greatest quarterback in Packers history, but he doesn't have much competition in that category, right? In comparing both Rodgers and Favre's first 7 years as a starter, it is staggering how dominant they both were. Favre in his first 7 years as a starter threw 235 touchdowns. Rodgers has thrown 213, but still has half of his season to go. Favre threw 139 interceptions, Rodgers 55. Favre threw for over 30,000 yards, and Rodgers is on pace for around 30,000 yards. But let's not forget about the health issues that Rodgers faced last year. Both quarterbacks have one Super Bowl victory, but Rodgers' all-time high quarterback rating for a season, 120. Favre's is 107 with the Vikings. Rodgers' season high in 40-plus yard completions, 51. Favre's 16. Plus Rodgers had to make up for key receivers like Greg Jennings and Donald Driver leaving the team. I'm not saying Rodgers is better than Favre, but he is certainly the best possible replacement that the Favre could have dreamed of. It was as hard as replacing Jordan when he left the Bulls, but he was replaced by Hersey Hawkins, so the Bulls were just as dominant, right? Rodgers has been a gift from the gods of football for his team and will continue to be for a long time, leaving fans' mouths permanently agape for many, many Sundays.
Hockey purists prepare to cringe. Last Thursday, Chief Operating Officer of the National Hockey League, John Collins, said that jersey sponsorship was both coming and happening in the NHL. In the grand scheme of things, this is probably the most financially sound move to be made for a league constantly grappling with its economic situation. And now that reports are surfacing that the salary cap may not increase next year after all, not to mention the possibility of expansion looming in the distance, the NHL is going to be desperate for cash. Considering jersey sponsorship has worked out remarkably well for soccer, it was only a matter of time before other leagues adapted to the increasingly corporate nature of sports. After all, the Metro Stars of the MLS were a struggling organization before Red Bull paid for some new jerseys and Thierry Henry. Now, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I would say I could see this coming. Jersey tucking is now illegal in the NHL. The Blues have eliminated their diagonal design for a more linear pattern. Carolina eliminated their signature hurricane flag along the bottom of their jerseys. The league has been preparing for this for a while. It's just tough to swallow that soon I'll be buying a Lundqvist jersey with an Advil logo spread across the front.
As a diehard New York sports fan, I was born with the natural hatred toward everything related to Boston sports. But as I grew older and started to watch sports more open-mindedly and not just as a hot-headed New Yorker, I started to appreciate greatness when I saw it. Over the past 15 seasons, Tom Brady has had the ability to remain at the top of the NFL no matter what has gotten in his way. Whether it is a torn ACL during the 2008 season or the lack of offensive weapons, Brady has consistently been in the elite class of NFL quarterbacks. Yes, I know there are a lot of things to hate about Tom Brady, such as his constant whining and commercials, but there is also a ton to like about him. Who wouldn't want to have a supermodel wife, make millions of dollars, and have won 3 Super Bowl trophies? I especially like the fact Eli Manning and the Giants were able to deny Brady another 2 Lombardi trophies, but that's just in their Giants fan coming out of me. Sorry, Cappy. This season, more than any, I'm rooting for Brady because I was able to pull off a GM of the Year type trade in one of my fantasy football leagues to land Brady on my team. Thanks, Edgar. Luckily, Brady has been able to come through and be one of the top fantasy quarterbacks this season with little or no offensive support other than Gronk. But all joking aside, Tom Brady is one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, and people should start to appreciate it because he will be a first-ballot Hall of Famer. All right, so that'll wrap up this week's episode of This Week in Sports. Tune in next week where we'll talk about the next week in sports.